Hi, everybody. So let me get started. Okay. So I'm going to talk about like how we are going to replacing 5 AWS services with MySQL HeatWave. And then I'm going to give you an overview of MySQL HeatWave on AWS. It's the same service. We're just having the service running natively on AWS using all the AWS native service to build the service. And then at the end, I'm going to give you a few examples of our customers who are currently running on our AWS HeatWave on AWS service. So if you are in the WIM's keynote session, you probably see these slides already. But I want to talk a little bit more about each of the use cases. So maybe before I go into, anybody is currently running any workloads on AWS? Nobody? Yeah? A few of them. Are you guys running RDS? Aurora? What are the services that you use? Redshift? Only Aurora? So like on your, like you're not running any machine learning, you're not running any analytics? Oh, okay. And then the rest? On OCI? So I'm sorry? Snowflake. Oh, okay. So Snowflake is not on my deck, but it can be applied. So let's see. So, okay, so since we are like MySQL HeatWave, so a lot of our customers start with MySQL, right? So on AWS specifically, then we're talking about RDS or Aurora. And then the next kind of logical way, and then that's kind of how our service evolved also as well, is that then customers really want to analyze the data that is stored in MySQL, because a lot of the cases, the data in MySQL are their customers' data. They want to analyze their customers' behavior, what is their buying behavior. They want to customize their application for their customers. So then they come to analytics. So what are the services that's on AWS that is offering analytics capability or data warehouse capability? The native one that is on AWS is Redshift. So depending on the customer data size, right? A lot of our customers are running MySQL, RDS, Aurora. If the data size is relatively small, typically they just run the analytics or those kind of queries in MySQL. And then the downfall of that is that because MySQL is not designed for OLTP, so then what happens is that they just suffer from a slower performance, and which affects their end user experience on the application. But they don't want to go into Redshift, right? Because that's a lot of problem going to Redshift. What is the problem? That you need to have an ETL process. Okay, so today, I mean, like maybe last year, they have started to announce a no ETL capability between Aurora and Redshift, and then I think recently added for RDS. But then you still have the problem of managing 2 separate systems. A lot of our customers, the requirement for adding analytics to their application is not just for reporting. So you can say, okay, 2 separate systems is fine. I have 2 separate applications connect to it. But we have talked to a lot of our customers. A lot of our customers coming from wanting to adding analytic capability into the application. So now you have 2 separate services running 2 separate SQL syntax in a single application. What does that mean? Your developers need to be able to write MySQL query, and then they need to be able to write Redshift query. And Redshift query syntax is very different from, I mean, it's not very different. They are all SQL compliance, but they are different. And then the way that they are different. So then it adds a lot of complexity, not just because of the ETL process, which add cost, and complexity, but also because from the development perspective, right? Your developers now need to acquire more skill sets in order for them to develop the application. So then the next step now is like as the company getting to analyze more historical data, now they want to predict the customer's behavior, predict the market trend, get sales forecast, right? For example, so then comes to machine learning. So if they use Redshift provide ML capability, but if they're not, then they use SageMaker. But anyway, Redshift, even if they use Redshift ML, the behind the scene is that they use SageMaker, right? So the data is still moving around, and then you need to be able to apply security policy for your data across all 3 different services now, right? So your data is actually moving around, and then in between there may be requirement for ETL process. And that means that the data can be stale. It may not be as real time. So then you're losing your competitive edge on the market for your application to update, to adjust to your customers. So as we are getting more and more data, right? So now we're starting to see a lot more customers want to build up their data platform, which is based on a data lake. So data lake, typically you put the data on the object storage, which is on AWS on S3. And then to analyze that kind of data, on AWS, the service itself is typically Athena or EMR or Snowflake. Snowflake can be applied to like Redshift or on that one. Again, it's the same kind of scenario, right? You have a lot of services that you need to manage. You may say that, okay, I may have different teams based on the different scenario, but overall you don't want to create silos across your teams as well, right? So you want to be able to provide a single service to allow them to be able to use however they want based on the setup, like the whole set of data instead of coming silo into this one, coming to silo into that one. And then be able to control your data as well, right? So like now you have so many systems. Even though you may say, okay, all of my data is stored in S3, but then from the access point of view, security point of view, now you have 5 different systems to control the security access of it. And then of course, the latest one is more of the generative AI and vector store. From the AWS side, right, the more native solution will be the Bedrock and then OpenSearch. Again, similarly, data needs to move around a lot. Like now you're adding 2 more services that you need to control. And I haven't talked about like what is the cost associated with it, right? Each one of them has their own costs. All of them are not free. And then this is just like a very high level on the terms of number of services that needs to get involved in this whole process. You have ETL process in some of them. You may involve Glue, and then there's S3, and then there's other services that is actually needed in order to make it really smooth across all of these services, moving data around, making sure that your security process, and then making sure that the use case that you want, right? So like I said, if you have a single application that you want to be able to apply all of this functionality in your application to your end user, now that your developers need to know all of these different aspects or all of this different way to invoke the functionality behind the scene, so then it's actually making the development process much more complex, making the development cycle much longer. So that's why what we are doing on MySQL HeatWave is wanting to provide a single service for all of this capability. I think like previous sessions already talked many times, right? We want to be able to allow our customers to be able to process the data on object storage, which is the lakehouse or data lake, and also as well as data store in OLTP, and in this case in MySQL. The whole idea is that we want to be able to process the data not just for OLTP, for data warehouse, for machine learning, for vector store, and Gen AI, and those are the 2 capabilities I think Nipun mentioned earlier that will coming out pretty soon. So this is all great, and then we have it started on OCI, but we have a lot of customers actually running on AWS, and then a lot of the time the customer who cannot move easily to OCI. So because of that, we actually make the service available natively on AWS. So the control plane, the data plane, the console are all hosted on AWS data center. The same capability now is available on AWS. We have currently on 5 of the AWS data center region. We are planning to add 2 or 3 more data centers this year. So The benefit of that is that now, like, if you want to use MySQL HeatWave and then you cannot move your work log into OCI, now you can use HeatWave on AWS. This eliminates the latency, reduce the cost, the egress cost across services, right? So there's a lot of benefits on that. One of the things that on HeatWave on AWS is that even though the underlying infrastructure is different, we still optimize our service for performance based on the AWS infrastructure that we use. So using TVCH, this is I think 4 terabyte data set. You can see, similar to OCI, our service is still much faster than Redshift, Snowflake, Google BigQuery, and Synapse. And in terms of price for performance, we are also still better than all of them. So the underlying infrastructure doesn't change the fact that we are the fastest database service across the industry, and then also we are the best price performance across the industry. So that part is more on the O-level analytics side. On the OLTP side, we also have an advantage as well. So our service is based on MySQL Enterprise Edition. So by default, then all the MySQL Enterprise Edition is available on AWS as well. And then thread pooling, I think earlier it has also mentioned, that has also been enabled on AWS service. So as you can see, comparing to Aurora, we are better in 10x better in throughput. And then the other main point is that we're able to sustain the throughput, right, as the concurrency increases, while Aurora, you can see that it drops. For the OLTP's perspective, right, also not just because of the performance, but actually our price is better. This is based on 200 vCPUs and 10 terabyte of data, right? So if you have large workload or you have a lot of servers running on Aurora or RDS or Azure, so you can see that our price is actually much better. And not just for large workload, we have worked with a lot of customers is actually running Aurora or RDS using their smallest instance. I don't know if you actually use the T3 instance since you're running on Aurora, but when I was working with customer, I noticed that they actually use the T3 quite a lot for their DevOps, for their development use. One of the reasons I'm pretty sure is because of the price, right? But if you're looking at our HeatWave on AWS service, our price is actually much cheaper, right? I'm comparing with the T3 instance, the medium and the large. The medium has only 4 GB of memory with 2 vCPU. The large has 8 GB of memory. And our smallest instance on AWS is actually with the 16 GB of memory. As you can see, comparing to pay-as-you-go pricing, we are much cheaper. Even if you're looking at the 1 year or upfront pricing, right? We are about the same with the medium for RDS MySQL and then cheaper than Aurora. So in terms of dev test environment, MySQL HeatWave is actually going to give you a better performance and better price for that. So the other capability, the machine learning capability, right? HeatWave AutoML. So AutoML basically is that we want to be able to allow customers to focus their business use case, focus on their data instead of spending all the time into training the machine learning model. And a lot of the time, if you are coming from a smaller company, they may not have the resource or may not have the expertise of a data scientist. So what we want to do is to enable this machine learning to a wider audience, right? Basically allow the DBA or allow the application developer to train their own model. What we do is that we automate the machine learning lifecycle so that you don't really need to worry about the pre-processing, algorithm selection, adaptive sampling, and the hyperparameter optimization. You need to define your business use case, figure out what are the relevant data that is relevant for the use case, fit into our system. We'll do all the cleaning, selecting the algorithm, optimizing the algorithm for you, and then provide an optimal model for you so that you don't need to go through that. And the other thing that we have for the HeatWave AutoML is that we have the explanation capability, which is a very good which is really needed for our customers, because you want to be able to explain, right? So if you, for example, if you're from a bank, you have a loan that you want to say, do I want to approve this loan or not approve this loan? If it comes up with say no, then you don't want to know why, right? Maybe it's because of his income, maybe it's because of his status, or maybe it's because of his existing debt. So those kind of the feature that are affecting the results of the prediction, right? So you want to understand why, and then you can explain it to your end user. So these are some of the use cases and industry that we have been working with our customers, right? So just to give you an idea, if you are thinking about adding machine learning into your application, providing to your end user, now you can see like we have worked with a lot of our customers on like across all of these industries, and there are definitely multiple use cases that customers are looking for. We support like classification, regression, time series forecasting, anomaly detection, and a recommendation system. And then all of this can be applied depending on the use case on which model to use. So besides that, when we are comparing to Redshift machine learning, right? So we are 25x time faster, and also 1% of the cost of Redshift. So I think earlier Nipun has already mentioned that actually if you're already using HeatWave for analytics, machine learning is actually free. We don't charge extra for that. So, so it simplifies your usage on machine learning as well. So the other thing about HeatWave on AWS is that we have a very interactive console. So here's some of the screenshots that show the console of on our AWS. So you'll be able to use our console, for example, to very easily manage the HeatWave instances. We have a built-in query editor or workspace where you can run queries easily against the database, or manage the data that is stored in MySQL or in HeatWave. You can be able to load data directly through our lakehouse from S3, or import the data from S3 into MySQL. Very simple and easy to use. We also have autopilot capability exposed through the console. So the auto-indexing that Nipun has mentioned earlier, we also have a very easy way to show you that once you run your workload and then run the advisor, you'll be able to see the list of indexes that we suggest to either create or drop. And then it will also show you what is the query that get affected by if you add this certain index, how much performance that you can expect based on our machine learning model, and then also like what is the storage impact, right? Because adding an index can increase the storage, or so it will show you that based on our machine learning prediction. The other feature I don't think we have talked too much is actually there's another autopilot feature we have is auto shape prediction. So for OLTP workload, if you are running a large OLTP workload, you may think that you will need it, right? Because maybe I think that I will have that many connections, the workload will be high. But it really depends on your workload. What that feature does is that it looks at your OLTP workload and see if the current MySQL shape that you use is actually enough for your workload. If it's not enough, it will suggest that to upsize to a bigger one, but it can also suggest to downsize. So if your shape is too big for the current workload, it will suggest you to downsize. So the benefit is that then now you can save cost, right? So running a smaller shape for your workload. Other things that actually we're coming up to make it easier for customers to use is that we're going to have a starter DB. So if you just come on board and want to try HeatWave on AWS, you can very easily start a MySQL HeatWave instance. And then with that instance, you will have all the pre-configured configurations and also the sample data set that is already loaded into HeatWave so that you can quickly try out our service. The other thing is also we added a few more sample data. So if the preloaded one in the sample data in the starter DB, you want to try another data set, you can also do that through our interface as well. So this is the HeatWave AutoML console. As I mentioned, we have a very interactive console. So here you can basically do a ML training the machine learning model, do the prediction based on the data set that you provide. And then from the result, we have a what if scenario where you basically can say if a certain feature, if I change it, would that actually affect the prediction? So that's a lot of the scenario where you can run through and then try out different things. So this customer, AI Wi-Fi, is actually a customer who provide. This customer is in Mexico. So what they do is that they partner up with malls. They provide Wi-Fi connectivity to customers who go shopping in the mall. And then what they do is actually they do marketing on the people who actually connect to the Wi-Fi in the mall. So what they come to us is that, first of all, they want to analyze the data. They were using RDS on AWS, but they don't want to move to OCI. So they come to HeatWave on AWS. They are using HeatWave for both the OLTP use case and also OLAP use case. But then later on, they find out that we have the AutoML capability. So what they have added is that they use AutoML to actually predict who is the user. So they want to classify the user. Basically, are they employee within the shops within the mall, or are they actual consumer, right? So that's one of the use case. So by identifying the user, now they can actually target the actual consumer. The other use case is that, based on the location of the user, which shop they have gone into, then they can see what is their preference, right? What are the things that they're interested in, and based on that information, they can use AutoML to predict, to do product recommendation or shop recommendations when they're shopping within the mall. So it's that kind of marketing that they have. So if you think about it, if this customer actually continue to use RDS, right? So what are they going to do? They may move the data to Redshift for analytics, but this customer currently, the data set is pretty small, so they may not do that. If that's the case, then for the analytics, it will be very slow, right? So that will not be good for them. So because consumer within the mall, they may not stay in the mall for too long, right? So if it takes too long to run a query to figure out their behavior, then they will be gone. So what's the point of that? And then the other thing is for the machine learning, right? So they will need to separate the environment into SageMaker maybe, or if they're not into SageMaker, they will need to create their own environment using Python. That's a lot of work for a small company or startup like this. So with MySQL HeatWave, this is actually very beneficial for them. Single service allows them to do all of them. And then all of them is actually through the SQL interface. They don't need to learn new syntax, new APIs, all of them through MySQL HeatWave. And it's natively running on AWS so that they don't need to worry about the latency between the application and then the database service itself. This is another customer actually in the Bay Area. They are actually come to HeatWave on AWS because of our ML Gen AI capability. So they do automation or provide governance solution. So really what they want to do is to be able to improve the ML process, right? So as you can see, what they are doing is that they're actually using multiple features on our service. AutoML, they're using the JavaScript, and then they're also using auto-indexing. So you can see the benefits here, right? So they have a 50% reduction in ML activities. So all of this automation that I talk about, right? If they don't use our service, they will need to have their data scientists to go through the data, clean the data, pre-process the data, and everything. That takes a much longer time. The second thing is about the performance improvement, right? So they're using auto-indexing. It's actually very interesting. We were talking to the CEO the other day, And he didn't realize that we have the auto-indexing feature. So we show him, and then he was like, this is so great. He was actually planning to hire a separate person just to manage the OLTP parts, to be able to try to make it more performance, right? And then we show him that, so now that he doesn't need to hire that person. He can save costs and then allow them to be able to improve the performance of the OLTP. JavaScript, they are trying to, because their application is Java, so then there's a lot of data processing that they do, and then they try our JavaScript process, and then actually they like it because now that they don't need to move the data from the application to the database and vice versa, and then they're able to do it within the database. And then the last point is the consolidation, right? So as I mentioned, 5 services into a single one service. They don't need to worry about that many services, that many deployments. I'm going to skip this because that one has been talked a few times already. So just to conclude, right, MySQL HeatWave on AWS is a service that runs natively on AWS. We do optimize for the underlying infrastructure. That's why I was showing you the performance. The data doesn't leave AWS anymore. So now you eliminate the data egress costs and then avoid the latency. We have a tight integration with AWS ecosystem within our service, and as well as we are working very on exposing all this integration for our customers as well, right? So some of the example I mentioned earlier, the integration with S3, you can import the data from S3 directly into MySQL on HeatWave, and then also use for Lakehouse. ECM migration, as you are seeing that, is since we're already on AWS, so the migration path is much easier. It's the same cloud. So I think that's kind of conclude my presentation. Do you guys have any questions? All right, then thank you.